Well, we've finally made it. It's bottling day. So today we'll be filling our bottles and putting a cork in them. Well, you've made it. It's bottling day. Now this is the day that we take that crystal clear Chardonnay and we get it into the bottles. Now what's important today is we're going to talk about a few different subjects. We're going to talk about different kinds of bottles that you can use. We're going to talk about different kinds of closures that you can use. We'll also go through the cleaning and the sanitizing of some of the bottles so that you can get an idea of how that's done, both with brand new bottles and with used bottles. And then I'm going to show you how to use a floor corker. And that's exciting too. I've got a lot of detail there that you can see. So we're going to really talk about a lot of things in this video. So I hope that you enjoy it. Stay tuned and let's start. Well, we are ready to bottle our Chardonnay. So what bottles do we want to use? Well, we have some choices. The bottles in front of you, from the middle to the left, are half capacity bottles. These are 375 milliliter capacity bottles. The one in the middle is just a whiskey bottle. That's a Bordeaux and a Burgundy style bottle, but they're half the capacity of the two bottles on the right hand side, which are 750 milliliter bottles. Both of these are standard capacity bottles, and I want to use those certainly in the bottling, but I might also want to change it up and use some of these as well. Maybe for the third half case, I'll use some of the whiskey bottles and maybe some of the Bordeaux and Burgundy bottles. But that's going to be up to you. Make sure that you buy bottles well ahead of time, because what we're going to do next is we're going to go through the cleaning and sanitizing of the bottles before we fill them. Another thing that you should consider well ahead of time is what kind of closure you want to use with your bottles. So let's look at a few now. There are traditional corks. There are agglomerated corks. There's a cork type called colmated. There's plastic. There are synthetic. And there are bioplastic corks. So let's focus on the closures we'll use today. We'll use colmated. The brand will be Acquamark. We'll use bioplastic. The brand will be Nomacorc. And we'll use plastic. The brand will be Zork. You can find colmated and bioplastic on Amazon and other online retailers. The Zork may be a little tough to find since they've gone out of business. When I'm making a wine kit, I like to use different closures just to make sure that I don't have a bad batch of closures. So, for example, for the first case, I might use the Acquamark. For the second case, I might use the Nomacorc. And for that final half case that you might get, I might use a combination of different types of corks, including plastic. With your new bottles, the ones that you've just rinsed off and put some cleaner in, you can just rinse those out like this using a rinsing tube that attaches to your faucet if you'd like. And you don't have to get anything fancy like this, but it does an admirable job of really rinsing out that bottle. Now that bottle is ready to go into the drying rack, and it will dry for about an hour before we use it to bottle. Now for used bottles that you have saved from the recycling bin, there's something you're going to have to do to those to make sure that they are cleaned well on the inside. And that condensation that you see here, that really is from a residue left behind by the cork. Now that needs to be thoroughly cleaned out. And to do that, you use a bottle brush, something that can actually scrub the inside of that. And I'll show you one that I use so that you can see how that actually works. But that's very important. You want to get that cleaned out so that the neck of the bottle is ready to receive the new cork. We will start by spraying some of the PBW solution that I've put together into the bottle. And once we've done that, then we're going to run the cleaner through it. And I've attached this to my drill. Make sure you get into the bottom of each bottle very well to get anything that might be down there, up and down the sides, and definitely through the neck of the bottle as well. And now that neck is completely clean, and it'll receive a cork very nicely. And you want to do that with all of the bottles that are used. You don't have to do it with new bottles, but you want to do it with all of the used bottles, because that's one point where I've seen people who use used bottles. They say, well, I don't get good wine, or there are problems with it. Well, that might be because their bottles aren't sealing really well. And of course, making sure that you're sealing your wine bottle is very important. Then after you've done that, it's time to rinse out that bottle one more time. Make sure that all of the oxidizer is out of the bottle. This is very important to do. And then that bottle is going to go into the drying rack, and it'll be ready for putting wine in about an hour. So on bottling day, you want to get everything ready to go in the order that you're going to need it. Notice I have the carboy set up. I've got the clean and sanitized auto siphon inserted. And yes, it does have the sediment cap on the end. You don't really need it with this because there is no sediment that we have to avoid. I've got my corks on the left. Now the corks are not washed or boiled or anything like that. Follow cork recommendations from other websites that talk about winemaking, and you'll find that the best advice is to take the corks from the containers that you buy them and go straight into your corking process. Now, here's a view of the full carboy. I'm going to zoom in on the very bottom so that we can do a quick clarity inspection. Make sure, anytime you are bottling, make sure that that wine is crystal clear. If it is cloudy, do not bottle that wine. You have more work to do. So now that we have verified we've got clear wine, we're ready to go. We're going to go into the bottling inventory, the setup that we have, so that you can see what you're going to need to do to bottle. Here's our setup. Let's take a quick inventory. On the bottom right, you have the bottles that are ready to be filled. You see in the middle, we have the carboy that is filled with wine that's been filtered. You see that we have an auto siphon that's been inserted. We'll add the filling tube to that in a moment. You see we've got our bowl of corks ready. And down on the bottom left, we have our floor corker. Okay, to do this, you position the wand inside the bottle, and then you press down on the wand until the bottle begins to fill. Now, what will happen is this is going to come all the way up, and you'll have to take the wand out because it will come up over the top. But it's not going to fill it exactly where we want it. So notice, here's the wand, I'm taking it out, and it's kind of low. I want this about 3 fingers from the top, right? So I want it right about here. So I bring that wand up, and I just tip it in a little bit at the top, and then I bring it up like that, right? Now, that bottle is filled. If you don't have someone helping you filling and corking, then it's a good idea to go ahead and do this in 2 stages. So fill each of the bottles with wine until there's no wine left in the carboy, and then set up your floor corker and go through the process of inserting the cork into each of the bottles. And that's what we're about to do now. And now we're ready to insert the cork into the bottle. So you take your cork out of the bowl. If it is a real cork, I tend to like to choose what side might be the better side. This one seems to be pretty much the same on either. And I insert that into the hole in the top. I take my wine bottle, and notice there's a little ridge here. There's a ridge, a receiving ridge underneath here, that when we put it in, it kind of snaps in. Notice it's not going anywhere. Now what this does is it squeezes, it compresses that cork, and then this plunger comes in and pushes it into the wine bottle. Now there's an adjustment here that you can make if your cork isn't going far enough into the bottle. The cork should go into the bottle and pretty much be flush with the top of the bottle. So this is a fast action, so it's going to be compress and insert. And there is a perfectly inserted cork in that bottle. This is another detail shot. See the cork. So this is after bottling day. You can see we used a variety of bottles. We used a Burgundy style for some. We used a Bordeaux style for others. These are also used, very popular for ice wine. And then we used a standard bottle for the rest. I did 2 cases, case 1 and 2 with this style or size of bottle. Then I did case 3, which is the balance. You get 24, and we got close to 30 bottles. And then I used, for the balance of that 6 or so bottles, I used combinations of these. These will be really nice to be able to hand out to friends as samples, but they'll also be nice because each bottle provides you with 2 glasses of wine, and that's sometimes enough for an evening. So you can see what your bottling choices are, and you can see what it looks like after you've bottled. Now, one of the things that's cool about making your own wine is that you get a chance to name it. So I've named this wine, it's my 2019 California Surfer Girl. And I've printed up neck labels for easy identification when that bottle is in the cellar. I've also included the bottling date, and that's important because you want to use that date to determine when you're going to open a bottle of wine. So for example, this was the beginning of June essentially, so I'm going to wait at least a month to 2 months before I open one. And here you can see the bottles in the cellar, so it's really easy to identify and pick out a bottle when you want to pull something to taste. So as I said, I recommend you print your own neck labels and put them on your bottles before you cellar them. It'll make it a lot easier for you to find the wine in your cellar. And don't forget, get creative with the name. because that's a cool and fun thing to do as well. And that will also influence what we do when we create custom labels in a future video. Wow, look at what we've done. Over the last set of videos, we've gone from taking a wine kit out of the box, going through all of its fermentation stages, getting it filtered and bottled. Now, that looks like a lot of work, and because it's been quite a few videos and I've gone through a lot of painstaking measures to make sure that you saw detail that's very important in the process, I don't want you to be discouraged. It seems like it's a lot, but I'll guarantee you, you'll do 1, 2, 3, you'll do multiple kits, and by the time you've done a few kits, gotten a few under your belt, it's going to be old hat. So stick with winemaking. I hope that you enjoyed this series as much as I did putting it together. I'll also be putting together series on red wine making. So there's a lot coming up. Just stick with it, and I think you'll really enjoy what you get out of it. So as always, have a glass of wine today. And if you've just gone through what we did making this wine kit, well, in about 2 months, maybe 3, you'll be able to enjoy a glass of your own wine. Cheers.